Hi everybody, Linda Carroll here from my studio, Gather of Great Things. It's great to be back and on this day, and I have really appreciated all of you who have been watching my videos and leaving comments. I've tried to answer everyone, and hopefully you'll respond back. I have been going through my 12 days of Christmas, and today I'm going to do the flip through and talk to you a little bit about what I discovered in my journey through the 12 days. So let's take a look at the first day of Christmas. This one, when I first started doing this series, I have to tell you that I was just trying to do something that still had something to do with Christmas, but would take up the time on my channel between Christmas and into the new year. And when I was looking for the little golden book I had on the night before Christmas, I ran across my wonder book on the 12 days of Christmas, and I thought this will be absolutely perfect. I can go through and kind of retell the story or song of the 12 days of Christmas, as I indeed do celebrate the 12 days of Christmas. So I started on day 1, page 1, which I actually did after Christmas, and went through day 12. And this series turned out to be so much more to me than just a retelling of the story. It actually became a reinterpretation or a reimagining of a story, which is really what art is all about. It's a way, it can be used as a way to reinterpret something that's happened in the past, something that's going on in the present. It can reinterpret your own story. It can reimagine something that someone else has written about or done artwork around. And so this, for me, turned out to be a reinterpretation of the story, The 12 Days of Christmas. So let's start with the first day. I knew that my intention was indeed to tell the story of the 12 days of Christmas. I knew my style is kind of surrealistic, magical realism kind of combined together. And I use a lot of old papers, children's books, that type of thing in my collages. So I went through my stash and I found a children's playing card with a pear on it. And I also found a children's playing card with a heart on it, and I made a copy of the page of The Partridge in the Pear Tree, and I used the actually part of the illustration from the original book. I found an illustration in a French magazine of this lady here in the background, which I added to this crown of hair that goes behind all these pieces in the back. And then I added different eyes. So it already started a story for me, a little bit different from the 12 days of Christmas story, but I was still just pretty much thinking about the story and the storyline. But I realized I was really ready to play with this. And indeed, the story, The 12 Days of Christmas, was used in playing, children playing. It was kind of a give and take game. If you could remember all the words all the way through the 12 days and go backwards to the first day, you could win the game. So, excuse me. So I started putting all of my parts of my story together. I did find a vintage stamp for the 12 Days of Christmas. I actually found 2 of them. And this word laugh came out of my stash, and I really like that. I thought this is going to be a lot of fun to go on this journey through the 12 days. So later on, as I looked at what might be symbolic in this particular collage, I noticed a couple things. One is the triangle that almost always appears in my collages. It's a really good design element to use so that your eye travels through the piece of artwork. So I had the 3, and I had the heart, which to me is definitely love, joy, laughter. And I had the eyes. Eyes show up in a lot of my collages. And, you know, these eyes replace the sleepy eyes that were on this woman. And these eyes are much more alert and intense. So that's what I started seeing in this particular collage. I think for me, it just told me that I was ready to play. I had this intention that I was going to carry through the 12 days, and this was the first one. So let's move on to day 2. Day 2 is 2 turtle doves. And again, I cut the turtle doves out of the book, copy of the page of the book. And this is the same woman that is on page 1. Now, I didn't want to use her, the bottom of her face in this particular book, in this particular page. This was all about what was going on up here in her mind. This was setting the intention. This was knowing I was going to be playing through this, but I didn't want to go too much further than that. But this one now has her eyes, the eyes that were in the original illustration by Mariette. I think it's Lies, I think. But I changed the mouth. I made the mouth brighter and darker and standing out a little bit more on the page. And down here in the background, I have the I think it's Myrna Loy. It's an advertisement from an old magazine, and she's speaking on the phone. So this particular page to me is talking about communication. It's the second day of Christmas. It's the day after Christmas. And we're talking about communicating with something or someone. Not exactly sure yet. but obviously it's about talking to someone or receiving a message from someone. So let's move on to page 3. Day 3 is the gift was 3 French hens. And I found this image of 3 people coming forth down the stairs towards the front of the page. And to me, aside from having the power of 3 right here, and I also had it over here in this triangle, and also here, I painted her fingernail red before I put the number on, so I had this larger triangle. I have this triangle here, right here, these 3 people, here with the 3 and the chicken heads. So I have the power of 3 going on. And as I decided to look up in a French dictionary, which I had, because I wanted to use some text back here in the background, which is again a very conscious decision, using my own mind. It's a very conscious decision. But what I didn't know was that the word poulet in French, which means chicken, also means a love letter or a fancy lettering paper. So again, what came out was communication through a love letter. There's love coming forth out of the page or towards the front of the page. And to me, it was all about this love coming forward, coming forth, coming my way. I found this little stamp down here. It was a copy of a stamp with the Eiffel Tower on it. And I believe this street, well, it did remind me of maybe a street in Paris. And it linked with the French dictionary in the background. So I have intention here. I have some child-like playful images. So I'm kind of in my mind planning what I'm going to be doing. And there's intention here. There's definite intention. I'm telling or retelling or reimagining the book, The 12 Days of Christmas. And in this one, there's going to be a message or communication, talking back and forth, going on. So, and here I have what appears to me as a very strong feeling of love letters, coming forward, standing up for themselves, maybe expressing how they are feeling, and I think this has ended up a very powerful page. So then the 4th day of Christmas. And the 4th day of Christmas is 4 calling birds. And I did make a copy of the page and I cut the birds out. And as I was going through my stash, whatever was calling to me that wanted to be on this page, I found a piece of an vintage almanac and some ledger paper. And then I found this telephone, which to me definitely connected to talking or communication, somebody sending a message, And then this beautiful border down here that I just fell in love with. And I also found some clocks, some pocket watches. And on the almanac, I had taken a rubber stamp and printed feathers. So when I went back and looked at it, I love the composition on this page. I love the circle, excuse me, that the birds are kind of flying in is repeated down here in the circle on the telephone. And yes, for those who are quite young, this is a vintage telephone that we actually used, and it only made phone calls. It didn't do anything else. There's a long distance communication going on, and I used my letters that I save to spell out the word birds, and naturally I kept my numbers on each page, number 4. But when I look back at it, the feathers in the background reminded me of like angel feathers falling. Could be bird feathers. When I go for walks, I collect feathers. And I thought, well, you know, maybe this is not a person calling, but maybe it's spirit calling to me. There's obviously a message coming, and it's a message of love, and it's coming right for me, and I'm open here on this page 1, as a child is, open to play. And you know how sometimes children have imaginary playmates. Well, when I was little, I had 3. And they lived inside a closet behind the front door. So that kind of imagination is going on here. Very pure, very open, very joyful, very playful. So then we went in to the next day, and I did take notes. I have my notes written down, and I'm continuing to write about this series. 5 golden rings is the gift for day number 5. And what I started seeing in this one is I put these fish in because, excuse me, she appears to be underwater. The background, I used a very watery scene. So in that watery dimension, it's kind of represents emotions and feelings going on that she's getting in touch with, and kind of, I think it's very daydreamy as she's looking at these rings on a string. And then I have these 3 fish, which is again 3. Fish have religious significance and spiritual significance. So I think that what I started seeing here was a combination of coming forth in all of these up to day 5 of the body and the mind, the imagination. Here's an arm, obviously doing what it does, holding things, and hands. And then we also had, I think, the soul coming into play, represented by these feathers and the fish. These, all 3 of these elements, to me, started coming into play. And the number 5, we're kind of moving into a change here. So we go from these watery depths of the emotion to day number 6, where we have 6 geese a-laying. And I also have 6 eggs kind of floating in the air, which is, you know, not usually where you find eggs. Eggs are, you know, more earth bound, sign of creation, creating, birthing something new. But I had this little girl here, and she looks very mischievous, and she looks very magical. And she's built this nest, and looks to me like she's kind of chewing on a hay stalk or straw, piece of straw. And she is imagining connecting with these geese. And geese, you know, geese can fly, but they can't fly very far. They spend most of their time walking around on the earth or swimming in water. And if they have to fly to get away from something, they can fly a short distance. But this to me is very, very much of the earth. But there is going to be a change. There's going to be a rebirth. And I think on this one, it is a child here, but the eyes are getting older and viewing the world a little bit differently. So we have our 6 geese, and here's this woman up here, and again, her mind is very busy. She's very much thinking about what's going on. And then you have this little magical child here whose ideas go all over the place. And I want to say a thank you to Mrs. C on this one, because she did point out that my first incarnation of this particular page, I had a few of the eggs upside down. I guess I wasn't paying attention, and I had the shadows on the top. So when I went in and looked at it again, I changed those eggs, and I did want all the shadows on the bottom. And actually it worked out so much better because this egg was so much lighter, and I put a darker egg in so it didn't stand out quite as much. And I did put lighter eggs where there were some darker eggs. So it kind of balanced it out really, really nicely. Um, you know, and if I want to stay with the wonkiness and the wackiness and the silliness, you know, how some people, I never did it, but some people threw eggs through the air at each other or at a door or something like that. So there's still a bit of playfulness going on here. So then let's move. Now the colors in here are basically yellow, red, dark green, dark brown, creamy colors. But then when we move over into the 7th day of Christmas, we have a different palette. And we've moved to a lighter, brighter time. Oh, I think I better get that glued down more. Here, let's get this done. I'm looking at it. We're looking at a young woman who is dressed in a very light, kind of chiffon-y dress. And I found her in my stash. And I took a copy of my swans. And then I can remember I was talking about how I have on most of the pages divided the pages into thirds. So I have this really nice design going. But then I started thinking about 3 again. And I have, you know, and before was brought up about body, mind, and spirits. Well, that 3 could represent that again. And then I have my girl here is actually walking on water. Which to me represented that she had risen above this watery area, watery environment that she is kind of being controlled by her emotions, kind of washing back and forth over her, to a place where she had risen above, reacting to her emotions. And she could indeed let those emotions flow through her, but not react to them in an unconscious manner. She recognizes them, she experiences them, and then she consciously decides how she's going to act. And here we have 2 windows, and everybody says the eyes are the windows to the soul. So to me, these represent her soul part, her spirit part. And I had a comment by a viewer who reminded me that the peacock that, you know, was actually a part of this illustration here in the background, that the peacock's feathers, this eye on the peacock's feather, represents the eye of God. So she has the peacock's attention. I mean, she's holding on to it. She's holding on to spirit. She is connected to her soul. and now is able to not ignore her emotions, not stuff them down inside of her, but to rise above them and experience them and acknowledge them and feel them, but then make a very conscious decision on how she's going to respond. So then we move to the 8th day of Christmas. And now we have this scene of 8 maids a-milking. Now, when I used to recite or sing the 12 days of Christmas, it didn't make much sense to me that somebody would send a woman 8 maids a-milking. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. This is where, things started to get a little weird and wonky itself in the song, as far as I was concerned. But I found this stairway back here, and I had to figure out how I was going to fit all of these cows and all of these maidens onto this particular page. So I thought, well, I have this staircase, and I could just have them on the staircase. The perspective is right. So I cut them out and I put them on the staircase. And then, for some reason, I cut the heads off of the cows. And I thought, okay, now let's see. What do I have enough of that I can use on these cows to complete them? And I have a whole book. I showed you the book of birds and bird heads. So I went through the book and I pulled out a number of the birds, and I put the heads of the birds on the bodies of the cows. And I laughingly said, well, now these are cowbirds, which, worked for me. Something a little weird, something a little strange there. And I think after I stopped the video, I went in and I just stuck in 2 of the cow heads, and I put them on 2 of the heads of the maidens. And I happen to have this, and I put this little cow down here kind of looking up into the picture. I had this picture of, well, it was actually a couple pictures of a fox on my table. And fox it has a lot of different meanings to me, some very personal. But one is that the fox is one of my spirit animals. And they've shown up in my life many times, and I've read a great deal about the symbolism of the fox. But this fox is just kind of watching, peeking around corners, over top of things, over top of a brick wall, kind of watching what is going on in this particular scene. Well, then I looked up cowbirds, and there really is a bird that is a cowbird. They're kind of a brownish black, most of them, shiny feathers bird, and they're very, very sneaky and crafty, because cowbirds don't build their own nests. And I had nests back here. Cowbirds lay their eggs in other birds' nests. And when the eggs hatch, the bird that owns that nest raises that cowbird as one of its own. So you might think, well, how in the world does a cowbird know that it's a cowbird? But a magical thing happens. And the cowbird, the baby cowbirds, leave the nest at night. And their parents find them. And they communicate. So even though their family is different, the environment that they were born in and raised in was different, the cowbird's deepest part of them, in their heart and their soul, know that they're cowbirds. Even though their mother might look like a cardinal, or a robin, or a blue jay. The cowbirds still know that they are cowbirds. They have a deep, deep inborn learning or knowing. And to me, that knowing who they really are is their true self. They know their true self. They're connected to their true self. And they go out and find, or their parents find them, and they communicate with the parents, and then they go back to their foster mother. But then they leave again. So I think that, to me, my true self, the deepest, truest part of me is in my heart, in my soul. It's within me. And this particular collage really shows that. And I think that the fox kind of peeking around the corner, the fox knows that they're really cowbirds too. The fox sees the true being, the true deep self in these cowbirds. Okay, that's kind of heavy. I have to admit, that's a little heavy. But then we go to the 9th day of Christmas. And we have, I told you when I made the video, I thought immediately of the phrase, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Which, that can't be answered. It's one of those questions, that really can't be answered. But we have an answer here, and we have 9 ladies dancing on the head of a pin. And I had pulled all these pieces together, made a copy of the page with the 9 ladies dancing, and then I found all these little typefaces to transform the ladies into. And I reimagined the entire scene of 9 ladies dancing into this pop art, and this is really the first pop art piece in this series, and this is one of my very favorite pieces. And pop art took a lot of direction from the Dada movement. So I had all these ladies, and I needed to find a pinhead that was big enough that I could put these ladies on that pinhead so they could continue having their fun time dancing. And I'm sure some of them are singing and they're having fun and yelling, and things are flying all over the place, and this kind of like out in space. So I think that in this particular collage, and I used my ransom note lettering again, which is always fun putting that together. I think that what I'm seeing here are all these women together, uniting together, coming together in every way. Their bodies are moving, you know, they're having a great time, you know, they're having an experience. But I think they're also here getting a glimpse out here in space of the endless possibilities open to them that their soul or spirit is connected to. Infinite possibilities. So I thought this really is one of my favorite images now. I love it. Now, I had a few people comment on this particular collage. Let's see if I can find it. Mrs. C, who comments a lot, and I love the fact that she's commenting and getting so involved in these collages, and she's very insightful. And that she says, I combined a cartoon page with all the fancy medieval ladies. Makes it that much more fun and wonky. And to her, wonky means outside the box or unexpected. And that she suggested that I make copies of each page and lay them all out, and that I would definitely see the story that was created. And then Susan said we should always be having too much fun. So, which I think these ladies are. And Papa Bear told me what her interpretation was, and I hadn't even thought of this, but she looked at the map of Maryland here, and she saw the word Bowie down here, and it reminded her of David Bowie's Let's Dance. And we have dancing, and we have the ladies dancing, and she said that, and then also his famous song Space Oddity ties right in with the background of the Pinhead cartoon. And she also said, with a bit of a smile, who knows, the universe may be channeling David Bowie through your collage. And I love that. I love that. And who knows, you know, who knows? But this one is, to me, one of the most joyful and one of the most out of the box is true collages in this particular series. And Mrs. C also asked me if I had ever used my collage as a springboard for painting. And you know, I have thought about that. I do a technique called automatic drawing, and the drawings that come out of that I have used as a springboard for paintings, but I have not used any of my collages, although I have thought about it. But this one may just be the one that becomes a large painting, because I just resonate with this one so much. So I really love the comments that are coming forth from everybody, and they, you know, they're getting more and more intense as we go along. So let's go to day 10. Okay, day 10 has 10 lords a-leaping, and here they are, flying through the air, jumping down the sidewalk, jumping on railings, and amidst all of them are these cockroaches crawling around on a different plane than these fellows are. And in back of them is a scene of a Japanese street. And again, their faces were kind of boring, so I decided to cut their heads off and use stamps. I have lots of stamps. I went through my stamp book and I found a number of stamps. I wasn't looking for a particular one, of males, masculine energy to put with these lords, who are dressed in dresses, by the way, or tunics with belts. And I just really, really like the way they turned out. And to me, it reminded me, you know, of Peter Pan flying through the air. And again, that's kind of a very childlike interpretation. But Peter Pan, you know, they say, is a little boy who doesn't grow up. You know, he always wants to stay a child. I have a different take on that, in that, yes, he does always look young, but I think that he chooses to retain his childlike innocence. And it's that innocence that thinks, you know, that he can fly and dance and just have a wonderful time all the time. Unless he's threatened by Captain Hook or the crocodile or a loss of one of the boys or of Wendy. So when I finished this page, I did, well, not when I finished this page. Years ago, I did therapy, and I was, you know, I had gotten divorced, and I was trying to balance my life again and get myself centered and grounded and able to move forward. And we did a lot of work around my inner child, my inner masculine, and my inner feminine. Well, at that point in time, when I pictured my inner masculine, it was like he was like this guy, right here, dancing in the air, almost like a string puppet, but just dancing and having a wonderful time and playing. And it wasn't too long after that I met this man, and his last name was Fox, and I found someone to play with, and I did for a number of years. So to me, I have a lot of masculine, but fun masculine energy. Not that heavy, macho, old masculine energy. This is the lighter, playful, masculine energy. Dancing, playing music probably. And it just, to me, kind of fulfilled the story and the storyline going through all of these collages. And also, I thought about the Queen of Hearts, whose famous statement from Alice in Wonderland is, "Cut off their heads." Which I did. I cut off their heads. And Papa Bear commented on this particular collage that she thought of the Japanese ritual of seppuku, where a warrior who has been defeated or shamed their tribe commits suicide, and at that time his head is chopped off. And then she linked that with the cockroaches crawling through and told me that cockroaches live for many days, even after their heads have been cut off, which I had no idea. And her last statement in that sentence was, "And perhaps upon hearing that fascinatingly creepy fact, one might exclaim, 'Good Lord.'" So then we move to day 11. And day 11 was, I think I was finally starting to get it on day 11, although it wasn't altogether conscious until I went back and I really started looking at this. And this one has the 11 pipers piping, all being poured from a container down into this cup, which is the receptacle. And to me, and the receptacle is red. And as I looked at this, I was thinking from above, from the universe, from that space out here, which if you look at it now, this could be the inside of the container, and these women could be pouring out. And this is blue up here. So from above, from the universe, from source, from spirit, from God, whatever you want to call it or believe, or from a container, flows into the cup or the receptacle. To me, that's your heart and soul. That love and joy and it lightens and brightens you, your true self. It lights that up. It lights you up. And I was looking at the background, and there are these cats back here that their face is cut in half. And even without that, with their heads and eyes and whiskers and everything, they're in balance. You have that balance going on. And also in the checkerboard here, I counted the number of squares, and there are 16 light squares and 16 dark squares. So again, we have that balance going on. And to me, it's a balance of body, mind, and soul or spirit. And the number 11, I looked up the symbolism of number 11, and number 11 is considered a master number, which resonates with an energy talk with a very, very high vibration. And 11 represents the spiritual illumination and the spiritual voice from within. And when I started putting all this together, it was like I had no idea, because it wasn't a conscious intention. But the story that was coming out of this to me, and I think for me, and maybe for you, if it resonates for you, is right now the need for balance of the body, mind, and spirit. And for me, when all those things are truly in balance, I'm in the flow. It flows. It's a timelessness that happens for me. There is no time. So finally, on the 12th day of Christmas, this happened. I did this the day after the problems in DC that happened. And in fact, I'm kind of glad I waited until today to do my flip through. But I had this image, this background image of this government building with the flags. And that to me represents our culture, the environment that we live in. And the red, white, and blue, obviously what had happened had a big impact on me. And I took all my drummers drumming, our 12 drummers drumming, and all of them but one had their arms together. This arm was across them, and they're beating on their drum. And I found this one drummer that actually had slid underneath some papers I had on my table. And after I had glued all these guys together, I found this one. And he's totally different. He had his drum on one side and his drumstick on the other. And immediately my thought was, or memory was, this drummer was marching to his own beat or his own drum. So he had to be away from this other group. And then I pulled from my stash this piece of a Milky Way or galaxy, and I pulled it because it matched this blue up here in the building. And I laid that down on here, and yes, I love this jagged edge. And it worked so perfectly that was it. And when I went back and looked at it, what I saw here was this self apart from all of these selves over here. And this self is marching to his own drum in a very positive way, because he actually is in touch with his true self or his soul. And even though, like his other other drummers, even though they were raised in the same culture with the same traditions, probably similar backgrounds, but definitely this, same culture and tradition. This one is still in touch with and hears and listens to an inner voice that makes him different, that makes him himself apart from everyone else. He is in touch with his own true self, his soul, but is still, in reality, he's still part of the culture. He still deals very much with this life. He's grounded. He's touching the ground. He's not flying around in the air like these guys. He's grounded. He's very physical. He plays a drum. He's very, very physical. He has a mind. So he has that ability to think and reason, and could be very logical, probably is. But he also has this soul connection that is his intuition, his inner voice. And when all of those pieces are balanced, to me, what you have is an authentic self. And you can't be anything else. You are your authentic self. And I had a comment by one of my subbies who said, and it really brought me to tears. It truly, truly did. That the way that I teach, the way that I talk, the way that I explain things, the feelings I express, the joy I have when I'm working, exhibited my authentic self. And I was so touched by that. If I've ever had a lifelong desire, that would be it. That my authentic self is available, is being seen, because that opens me up, and hopefully it'll help you open up to your creativity, because you have an endless possibilities out here. Endless possibilities. Endless. The dance goes on. Endless possibilities to create, to read into the meanings of your creations, to listen to what they are saying to you, to have a conversation, a communication with this imagined or reinterpreted world that you have created. And I finally figured out what this 12 days of Christmas led me to. And that was this epiphany. That my greatest dreams and hopes and desires are being fulfilled in what I'm doing here with you. And I am here to serve your need or needs. I hope that, and I know many of you, because you've expressed it, like the way that I teach and like what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it. But I think today I've given you my own story, in that, you know, I went from a place of being this kind of magical little girl who lived in a home where it was somewhat acknowledged. I loved to play. played a lot by myself. There was some trauma that happened to me in childhood, as happens to most of us. But being very, very sensitive, it didn't take much. But she was still magical, even though she was probably saw more than she really needed to see at a young age. And over these past many, many years that I've been on this planet, I have been able to produce artwork, to be a teacher, to care about my friends and my family very deeply. And now I'm doing something that I absolutely love doing, and I hope it shows, and I think it is. So I want to say thank you. I want to really, from the deepest part of my soul, I want to say thank you for following me, for commenting on what I am doing, what I do. I appreciate your suggestions and your knowledge and your wisdom and your thoughts and your feelings. And I hope we can continue on, and you'll continue on with me on this creative, artistic, spiritual journey that we're on. So I want to suggest, if you're interested, go back and read some of the comments that people have made on the 12 Days of Christmas. And I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to work on next. And I'd like to ask you for some suggestions. What you would like to see in the future, you know, as far as collage work and looking at your artwork and looking at my artwork and seeing what we are learning and being told. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to hear and see. I'm going to start on a new series. I'm still pondering exactly what it's going to be, but I'm going to have it figured out really quickly because I miss making videos and corresponding with you. So I hope this flip through was long and it was very different from my other flip throughs of journals, but it was very much a series that provided growth for me. It provided messages. It provided a lot of fun. It provided insight and some explanations to me about why I'm here on YouTube and why you are here with me. So I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening, whichever the case may be. It is with great gratitude that I thank you for being here. Many blessings to you. Till next time. Bye for now.